15 men, 300 years of combined experience, 40,000 engines torn apart and rebuilt with their own hands. I asked them one simple question: which outboard actually survives? Not which one has the best commercials, not which one wins tournaments, which one is still running when everything else has quit. I expected Yamaha to dominate. I expected Mercury to make the list. I expected the answers to match what every forum and every salesman has told us for years. I was wrong. What these commercial mechanics revealed goes against everything the marine industry wants you to believe. The brands they trust aren't the ones with the biggest market share. The engines they'd stake their own money on aren't the ones filling showroom floors. And the real reason why? That's the part nobody's talking about. Walk into any marina in America, and within 10 minutes, you'll hear the argument. It happens at the fuel dock. It happens over beers at the tiki bar. It happens in the service bay waiting room while someone's lower unit gets rebuilt. Yamaha or Mercury, Honda or Suzuki, everyone has an opinion. Everyone has a story. And everyone is absolutely certain they made the right choice. This is the mythology of the outboard motor. It's a belief system built on brand loyalty, forum debates, and decades of marketing that has shaped how millions of boaters think about reliability. Yamaha owners will tell you about Japanese precision. Mercury fans will talk about American power and racing heritage. Honda enthusiasts speak in reverent tones about automotive engineering translated to the water. Suzuki supporters consider themselves the smart ones who found the hidden value. And somewhere in the corner, an old-timer mourns Evinrude, gone since 2020, a brand that once defined what an outboard motor could be. These beliefs aren't random. They're reinforced every day by advertisements, by dealer recommendations, by the guy 3 slips down who swears his engine has never given him a problem. Marine publications run reader surveys, and the results always seem to confirm what people already believe. Brand loyalty runs deep in this industry. In a 2022 survey by a major boating magazine, 73% of owners said they would buy the same brand again. But here's what those surveys never measure: actual survival rates. They measure sentiment. They measure satisfaction. They measure how people feel about their purchase. They don't measure which engines are still running at 5,000 hours. And that distinction matters more than most recreational boaters ever realize. The average weekend boater puts somewhere between 50 and 100 hours on their engine each year. 100 hours of sunny afternoon cruises. 100 hours of fishing trips and sunset runs and lazy days on the water. At that pace, even a poorly maintained engine can last a decade before showing serious wear. The consequences of a bad choice take years to reveal themselves. But for commercial operators, the math is completely different. A charter captain in the Florida Keys might log 1,200 hours in a single season. A commercial fisherman in Alaska can put 800 hours on an engine in 4 months. These are not weekend toys. These are the machines that determine whether a family makes payroll or files for bankruptcy. When a charter boat breaks down 40 miles offshore with 6 paying customers aboard, brand loyalty becomes meaningless. What matters is whether that engine starts. This is why I went looking for mechanics, not enthusiasts, not salesmen, not the marketing departments who craft the messaging. I wanted the people who see these engines with their covers off, the ones who diagnose the failures, order the parts, and rebuild the machines that others have given up on. I found 15 of them, 4 along the Gulf Coast, 3 in the Pacific Northwest, 2 on the Great Lakes, 3 on the Atlantic seaboard, 2 in Australia, 1 in Alaska. Combined, they represent 347 years of professional experience. By their own estimates, they've serviced more than 40,000 outboard engines across every major brand. I asked each of them the same question: in your experience, which outboard brand and model range consistently delivers the longest service life under heavy commercial use? And then I asked the follow-up that made several of them pause. What would you personally put on a boat if your family's income depended on it? I expected confirmation of what the forums always say. I expected a clear winner. What I got instead was a lesson in how little most of us actually know about the machines we trust with our lives. Let's start with what they didn't say. Mercury Marine is the giant of the American outboard industry. They control roughly 45% of the North American market. Their engines power luxury center consoles and tournament base boats. Their dealer network stretches into nearly every coastal town and lakeside community in the country. They've invested billions in research and development, and their Verado line represents some of the most technologically advanced outboards ever produced. So when I asked 15 commercial mechanics which engines last the longest, I expected Mercury to dominate the conversation. Instead, only 2 of them mentioned the brand at all. Neither placed it first. One mechanic on the Gulf Coast, a man with 28 years of experience, explained it this way. "Mercury makes a fine engine for someone who boats twice a month," he told me. But in a commercial application, the 4-strokes, especially the Verados, they're over-engineered. Too many electronics. Too many proprietary parts. When something goes wrong at sea, I can't rig a fix. I need a dealer with a laptop. This wasn't a criticism of Mercury's quality. It was a concern about complexity. A 2023 industry survey found that 67% of commercial operators ranked independent serviceability as their top maintenance priority. They need engines that a skilled mechanic can diagnose and repair without manufacturer-specific software. They need parts that don't require a 2-week wait from a centralized distribution center. For weekend boaters, none of this matters. The dealer is 15 minutes away, and the boat can sit on the lift until the appointment. For a charter captain whose mortgage payment depends on tomorrow's trip, complexity is risk. Honda surprised me even more. Their reputation for reliability is legendary in the automotive world. That reputation follows them into the marine industry, creating a halo effect that influences buyers who've spent decades trusting Honda cars. But commercial mechanics see a different picture. A mechanic in the Pacific Northwest with 31 years of experience put it bluntly. "Honda makes a beautiful engine," he said. "Quiet, smooth, efficient. But they never really committed to the big commercial market. Parts take longer to get, the dealer network is thinner, and above 150 horsepower, they just don't have the presence. Most of my commercial guys need 200, 250, 300. Honda's not in that conversation. The numbers support his assessment. Honda's outboard market share has declined from approximately 12% in 2015 to around 8% today. Their largest current model produces 250 horsepower, while competitors offer 300, 400, even 450. Honda's automotive DNA, their obsession with refinement and engineering elegance, may have limited their appetite for the brute force workhorses that commercial operators require. And then there's the ghost that still haunts this industry. Evinrude, a name that once defined American outboard manufacturing. In May of 2020, BRP, their parent company, announced they were ending production. They blamed the pandemic, but mechanics I interviewed believed the death had been coming for years. A Great Lakes mechanic with 35 years in the trade still speaks about it with something close to grief. The E-Tech was a phenomenal engine, he told me. 2-stroke, but clean. Powerful. I've got customers still running E-Techs with 4,000 hours on them. But BRP kept chasing the recreational market, kept cutting costs, and when COVID hit, they just gave up. Now those customers can't get parts. It's a tragedy. More than 50,000 Evinrude engines remain in service across North America. Their owners now face a shrinking parts supply and a dwindling network of mechanics who know how to service them. It's a reminder that in this industry, a brand's survival matters as much as an engine's. So if not Mercury for its complexity, not Honda for its limited commitment, and not Evinrude for its existence, who did these mechanics actually trust? Yamaha appeared in the answers. 9 of the 15 mechanics mentioned the brand, which wasn't surprising. Yamaha has built a global reputation on reliability, and their market presence is enormous. But the way they talked about Yamaha caught me off guard. They weren't praising the newest models. They weren't excited about the latest technology. Instead, 6 of those 9 mechanics specifically recommended older Yamahas, engines built between 2010 and 2018, over current production. A mechanic on the Atlantic seaboard with 24 years of experience explained the logic. "Yamaha's good," he said. "Solid. But here's the thing. Their best engines for longevity aren't the new ones. I tell commercial guys to find a clean F-150 or F-200 from 2012 to 2018, before they started adding all the emissions equipment and the digital integration. Those engines are tanks. The new ones have more features, but more features mean more failure points." This wasn't anti-technology bias. These are professionals who use diagnostic software every day. Their concern was simpler and more practical. Every wire is a potential failure. Every sensor is a future service call. Yamaha's 2019 transition to the second-generation F-Series brought integrated Helm Master EX controls and expanded digital capabilities. Recreational boaters loved the features. But some mechanics report increased complaints about electronic throttle and shift systems. For commercial operators who measure success in uptime, the old mechanical simplicity still wins. But here's where the investigation took its most unexpected turn. When I tallied all the responses, one brand appeared more often than any other as the first choice for commercial longevity. It wasn't a Yamaha, it wasn't Mercury, it was Suzuki. 7 of the 15 mechanics named Suzuki as their top recommendation for long-term commercial durability. 4 of them specifically pointed to the DF200A and DF250 platforms. An Alaskan mechanic with 19 years of experience working on commercial fishing vessels didn't hesitate with his answer. "Suzuki doesn't get the glory," he said. "They don't sponsor the big tournaments. But I've got crabbers running DF250s with 5,000 hours on original powerheads. The fuel system is simple. The gear case is overbuilt. And when something does break, I can get parts in 3 days, not 3 weeks." The technical reasons behind Suzuki's reputation among these mechanics are specific and measurable. Their lean burn technology reduces carbon buildup during extended operation. Their offset driveshaft design lowers the engine's center of gravity, which reduces stress on mounting hardware over time. Multiple mechanics suggested that Suzuki conservatively rates their horsepower, perhaps by 5 to 10%, meaning the engines routinely operate below their actual peak stress thresholds, and parts pricing runs 15 to 25% lower than equivalent Mercury components. The irony is hard to ignore. Suzuki's market share in North America hovers around 10%. They're the 4th-place brand in sales. They don't have the dealer density of Mercury or the brand recognition of Yamaha. But among the people who spend their days rebuilding failed engines and keeping commercial fleets operational, Suzuki has quietly become the consensus choice. None of this appears in the magazine surveys. None of it shows up in the marina parking lot arguments. The mythology of the outboard industry is built on what sells, not on what survives. And the mechanics who see the truth every day have little incentive to broadcast it. They're not paid to promote brands. They're paid to fix what breaks. What breaks less often, in their experience, is frequently not what the industry wants you to buy. But the mechanics weren't finished, surprising me. 3 of them, all with more than 25 years of experience, gave me an answer I genuinely didn't anticipate. The longest-lasting outboards they'd ever serviced weren't modern 4-strokes. They weren't the latest technology. They were 2-strokes designed in the 1990s. A Gulf Coast mechanic with 34 years in the trade told me about a shrimper he still services. The boat runs a 1998 Yamaha 250 2-stroke. Saltwater every single day, 11,000 hours on the clock. They've rebuilt it twice, but the bones are original. "You can't kill it," he said. "These new 4-strokes are beautiful machines, but they don't make them like that anymore." The engineering explanation is straightforward. 2-stroke engines have fewer moving parts. There's no valve train, no complex oiling system. Lower compression ratios mean less internal stress on components. And somewhat counterintuitively, the dirtier combustion process actually deposits protective carbon layers on certain internal surfaces. When a two-stroke does need rebuilding, the job is faster and cheaper. A skilled mechanic can complete a powerhead rebuild in a single day. The trade-off is environmental. Two-strokes are no longer sold in most markets because they can't meet EPA emission standards. The mechanics weren't advocating for their return. They were mourning a loss and revealing a deeper truth about engineering itself. Longevity and efficiency are often opposing forces. The regulations that cleaned up our waterways also ended an era of simpler, more durable machines. This led me to a harder question. If experienced mechanics know which engines last longest, why doesn't everyone else? Why does mythology persist? The answer begins with economics. Marine dealerships generate revenue two ways. They sell new engines, and they service them. An engine that runs 6,000 hours without major work generates far less profit than one needing significant repairs at 2,000 hours. This isn't a conspiracy. It's simply how the business model functions. The numbers tell the story clearly. The average dealer margin on a new outboard engine runs between 8 and 12%. The average margin on service labor runs between 45 and 60%. Dealerships are financially structured to benefit when engines return to the shop. An Australian mechanic with 22 years of experience was careful with his words. "I'm not saying manufacturers build in failures," he told me. "But I am saying they don't cry when a gear case goes at 1,500 hours instead of 3,000. That's another $4,000 in repairs. The whole system is designed around replacement cycles, not infinite durability." Then there's the marketing machine. Every year, manufacturers announce new and improved models, more horsepower, better fuel economy, integrated digital displays, joystick piloting, GPS-assisted anchoring, smartphone, connectivity. The feature lists grow longer with each product cycle. But when you ask commercial mechanics what actually matters for longevity, you hear the same words repeated. Simplicity, parts availability, serviceability. These aren't features that sell boats at shows. They're not specifications that make brochures exciting, but they're what keeps an engine running when the owner's income depends on it. The recreational market drives innovation. Manufacturers compete for buyers who want the newest technology, the smoothest ride, the most impressive helm display. But the commercial market reveals what actually survives when the hours pile up and the salt takes its toll. The mechanics also emphasized something that contradicts nearly every brand loyalty argument you'll hear at a marina. The badge on the cowling matters less than most people think. What matters more are three factors that have nothing to do with which company built the engine: maintenance, application, and honesty about both. A well-maintained Mercury will outlast a neglected Yamaha every time. This was repeated to me so often it became a refrain. Oil change intervals matter. A node replacement matters. Lower unit service matters. The mechanics weren't dismissing brand differences entirely, but they were putting those differences in perspective. An owner who follows the maintenance schedule religiously will get more life from any engine than someone who ignores it, regardless of the logo on the cowling. Application matters just as much. A 300 horsepower engine running at 80% throttle will outlive a 200 horsepower engine running at full capacity. Commercial operators who understand this principle deliberately overpower their boats. The upfront cost is higher, but the engine spends its life loafing instead of straining. Over thousands of hours, that margin becomes the difference between a rebuild and a replacement. And then there's honesty. The mechanics who praised Suzuki weren't Suzuki dealers. They had no financial incentive to recommend the brand. That independence is rare in an industry where most advice comes from someone with something to sell. Finding sources without conflicts of interest may be the most valuable research any buyer can do. When I asked these 15 professionals to rank what matters most for longevity, a clear hierarchy emerged. First, serviceability. can an independent shop work on the engine without manufacturer-specific tools and software? Second, parts availability. Can you get components within 72 hours? Or are you waiting weeks for a shipment from overseas? Third, a proven platform. Has this engine been in production for at least 5 years, long enough for the problems to surface and the fixes to be established? Fourth, total cost of ownership. Not just the purchase price, but parts, labor, and fuel over the engine's lifetime. And fifth, horsepower reserve. By 20% more than you think you need. Notice what doesn't make the list: warranty length, brand prestige, dealer financing incentives. These are the metrics manufacturers emphasize because they drive sales. But they're not the metrics that matter when your engine is your livelihood. For those seeking specific guidance, the mechanics offered concrete recommendations. For heavy commercial use, meaning 1,000 hours or more per year, the consensus pointed toward the Suzuki DF200A and DF250, along with Yamaha F200 and F250 models from 2014 to 2019. For moderate commercial use, between 500 and 1,000 hours annually, the Yamaha F150 from any production year and the Suzuki DF150 earned repeated endorsements. For recreational boaters who simply want an engine that will last, the Honda BF150 and BF200 remain excellent choices, as does the Yamaha F150. Before purchasing your next outboard, ask 3 questions, not to the salesman. To a mechanic. What's the most common failure on this model? How long do parts typically take to arrive? And would you put this engine on your own boat? I started this investigation looking for a simple answer. I wanted a winner. What I found instead was something more valuable. A different way of thinking about reliability. The mechanics I interviewed don't worship brands. They respect designs. They've learned through thousands of hours of labor that the best machines are often the simplest, and that complexity serves marketing more often than it serves the people who depend on these engines. In a world that constantly sells us the newest, the fastest, the most advanced, these professionals reminded me of an older truth. Durability is not a feature you add with software. It's a commitment you build in from the beginning. Or you don't. The best engine is the one you maintain. The second best is the one you can fix yourself. Everything else is just conversation.